pleased to be here, and I was actually, when I walked into the room, I just reflected on the fact that the first agribusiness conference I went to, and bear in mind they're nearly 40 years in agribusiness, so the first one I went to was an apple and pear conference in Coffs Harbour. Now, I know none of you are old enough to be there, but I also just thought the topic of that conference was setting out a policy for granting export licences based on minimum quality standards. So worth thinking about. That was quite a while ago. Yeah, look, I want to talk about branding, and look, I'm no branding guru. I've just worked for businesses in New Zealand that are all about branding. And when I went to New Zealand, I thought I knew everything about agriculture. I was going over there to teach them a thing or two. They taught me a lot more than I could ever teach them, particularly in this area. I just want to put up, I've got here 2 kiwi fruit. They were grown in an orchard in Te Puke, which is in the Bay of Plenty in New Zealand. They were probably grown certainly on the, or close to in the same row, maybe even on the same vine. But as I've got up there on the slide, if you walk into, say, a supermarket in Hamburg or a supermarket in Tokyo, this one that's got the Zespri brand on it, in Hamburg you might pay 70 euro cents. For this one, with no brand or a local brand of some sort, you might pay 50 euro cents. Same fruit. So now what does that mean? Well, it's obviously good for the retailer. It's good for the consumer because they're certainly getting a quality fruit. But as I said, there's no difference between the two. For the orchardist, just some numbers. A gold kiwi fruit grower, his orchard gate return per hectare in the last year, if he's good, would have been around 100,000 New Zealand dollars. For a green kiwi fruit producer, would have been around 60 to $65,000 orchard gate return per hectare. Average orchard size in New Zealand's around about, I suppose, 8 to 10 hectares. So a lot of it's to do with how people see your product and what they're prepared to pay for it. And I just put in a point there, if you walk into a supermarket in Tokyo in particular, a lot of the people there, a lot of the people in the fruit sector of the supermarket are not looking for kiwi fruit, they're looking for a Zespri. So the issue is, how do you get to that point? And maybe we'll just show you that now if the technology allows us.
스트레스에 소화불량이던 남편 속도 편안해지고 무엇보다 영양이 꽉 차서 아이들이 저녁까지 생기더라고요. 맛있는 제스프리 키위. 쌩쌩한 우리 가족의 습관이죠. 매일매일 잊지 마세요.
So sweet, juicy, and delicious. The new Zespri kiwi fruit also gives you 3 times the vitamin C of oranges and 10 times the nutritional goodness of apples. So amazing today.
I wasn't sure to run that second one, but that's the television program they're running this current season. In fact, I think 1 or 2 of those is still to be run, so you're probably the first outside the company to see it. So, but it just gives you a bit of a glimpse of what people are seeing in relation to the Zespri brand. So what's it mean for consumers? Well, it is all about quality, and I'll come back to that a little bit later, but you know, you are guaranteed to get what you pay for. Health, and we've talked a little bit about health in the previous session, and certainly Zespri has done a lot of work and leverages highly off the work that's done in relation to the health benefits of kiwi fruit. And one of the things you saw there. There's 3 times the vitamin C of an orange. Very powerful, particularly amongst the health-conscious consumers, and I would argue particularly in certainly certain markets in Asia. It's exciting. You saw part of that. It's exciting. They do a lot of in-store promotions where consumers are at the point of purchase. They're giving, not only just giving away fruit, but they're putting on games for kids. They're actually creating a bit of colour and movement in the store, which the retailers like as well. It gets people interested, gets people looking for particular products. It's good for the retailer. In terms of the quality issue, ready to eat. Zespri kiwi fruit at the point of sale in a supermarket is soft enough to eat. Now, how many of us have gone in to buy kiwi fruit and you wonder now, is it ready to eat now? Do I have to put it in the fridge for a while? Do I have to leave it on the kitchen table for a week? Well, we just don't know. Kiwi fruit from Zespri, you go in, you can eat it straight away. The other thing that they do is, in Australia in particular, we get a kiwi fruit and we peel it. It's not easy to eat, unless you eat it whole, as some people do. But what Zespri does, a lot of their promotion around the brand is based on ease of eating, cut and scoop. And if you're buying a package of kiwi fruit that's in a punnet, often you'll get a spife, which is the little knife and spoon, plastic spoon. It's all about ease of eating for the consumer, convenience. It's a big, obviously an important point in, as we all know, is a very crowded consumer market. So what's it mean for the wholesaler, the retailer, the distributor? Well, those values that we talked about for the consumer obviously equally apply, and I'm giving this as someone who managed a business, and a lot of my job was interfacing with these guys. And the biggest thing, whenever I ask people, apart from those things about quality, fantastic, consumers like it, I like what you do with your advertising, it's all exciting, it's great. But most importantly, from the wholesaler, the importer, distributor, if we had a problem, we fixed it. We got a load of soft fruit. You guys don't walk away. You sit down and work out something to fix it to my satisfaction, to your satisfaction. And it's, as you know, it's all about maintaining a relationship, keeping it and delivering value from the relationship. So, and as I've said before, Zespri doesn't just dump fruit on the buyer. They actually support the product in store. And I know a lot of stores, and some in Australia, aren't so happy about sellers of fruit going in there and doing things in their store. They like to keep that under their own control. Zespri's got a reputation, many of its world markets, of being welcomed into the store. In fact, the retailers asking, when is Zespri going to launch their season? We want people in our store. We want them doing things in our store like they did last year. So certainly a lot of innovation, a lot of stuff that sometimes when I first went there, I thought, that's really out of the planet, this stuff, but it works. Now, we all know it takes money. Certainly in my time there several years ago, we had a $100 million plus marketing budget. We had significant R&D investment in varieties and orchard practices. So it was about delivering on that brand message, that quality message. So it's no point having those fantastic TV ads if your product isn't meeting those expectations that those ads are setting. Quality is certainly managed. You harvest when the dry matter in your fruit has reached a minimum level, and dry matter, as you know, like bricks, converts to taste. So in terms of minimum dry matter levels or dry matter levels themselves, growers were paid depending on the dry matter level in their fruit. Now, when that was introduced, that was a tough one because some growers were getting low dry matter fruit, but the customers were telling me at the time, your kiwi fruit, this was in Japan, your kiwi fruits are starting to taste like potatoes. Now, when I told the growers that, it was a bad message, but it was a message. So then the introduction of dry matter payments was a difficult one to swallow. Some people felt, I'll never be able to grow high dry matter kiwi fruit. Well, I'll tell you now, talking to the Zespri people at the moment, most of those growers have. It's amazing what the dollar does in terms of driving innovation at the orchard level. You guys know that. Certainly, a strong marketing infrastructure. Now, Zespri has an interesting model. A lot of companies exporting any sort of product. Here in Australia, we set up a business overseas. Let's say we set up a business in China, and we appoint a guy from here in Australia. He goes over to China and he heads up the, let's say, the Shanghai office. Zespri has a different approach. It employs in-store people to manage the business in those markets. So people with the same culture, same backgrounds as the consumers and the distributors are running Zespri's business in those countries. So it's a very decentralised marketing strategy, but I would argue a very, very effective one, particularly when you have an issue. When you have a problem, you've got a residue level issue, you've got some issue where you really have to work hard to ensure your product maintains access into that market. Having a local person, similar culture, who understands the business and more importantly understands the culture of the importing country is a huge advantage. Now, why can Zespri spend that sort of money? Well, it's pretty simple. They are a single seller. They're probably the last, what we'd call here, an export monopoly. And actually that screen should say it actually obtains all the fruit for export out of New Zealand to all countries except Australia and New Zealand. Now, it has that piece of legislation, but I can tell you now 99.99% of the 3,500 growers in New Zealand staunchly defend that marketing system. And they do it because they're getting those dollars I talked about coming out of the system. But leave the issue of the single seller aside. I mean, the real issue is that security of supply, because what that does, it enables you to undertake and invest in those sort of long-term strategies I talked about. Long-term marketing strategies, long-term R&D. You can afford to spend dollars on a return that may not come your way for 5, 6 or 7 years, because you know each year you're going to get the fruit to continue to support that budget. That's as simple as that. As I said, it enables that brand investment and certainly enables that R&D spend to occur. Now, in New Zealand, the Zespri brand and what it does, and to some extent Fonterra is in the same category, but in terms of the fruit business, the Zespri brand is being replicated without regulation, without the single seller status, but again it comes back to scale, security of supply. I'm involved with the Mr Apple business. We have 1,000 hectares of orchards, either owned in our own right or leased on long-term leases. So we know we're going to get fruit from that 1,000 hectares. That's our fruit, and we can afford to start our branding. Now, we do it on a relatively small scale, but all those attributes, all those qualities, the things about quality, strong relationships with our customers is paramount. So, and we've only started this in any concentrated way in the last 2 to 3 years. So I heard earlier someone was saying it takes 20 years to start a branding strategy to get results. Well, I'll argue it doesn't take anywhere near that long. It shouldn't, because if you are, you're doing something wrong, I believe. And again, I don't want to sound arrogant, I'm just telling you the way it is. So, you know, that's where these guys, Mr Apple, we had a stand, I think our first stand at Asia Fruit last year. Now, we actually generated actual business from that stand, so there was a measured return just by having that stand. That was the first year we'd done it. We've now employed a brand manager. We're doing nutritional campaigns. We talked earlier, the earlier discussion about health. Again, health, the Apple health message is very, very strong in that campaign, and we're going to do a lot more over the next couple of years. Another example, NutriKiwi, which is a company I'm involved in, and it's owned by growers and packers of kiwi fruit in New Zealand. We supply over 50% of the green kiwi fruit that comes to Australia. And just last year, we decided to sell under a single brand based around the nutritional benefits of kiwi fruit. So we're starting, in many respects, from scratch. And it's tough. I can tell you it is tough. Because when you come along with a new brand, and even though your fruit's been sold here before, but under a different pathway, getting, certainly, as you know, the big retailers to sign onto that's tough because they've got existing relationships and quite rightly they stay with them. So we're going to have to convince them to give us a piece of the action. But we've certainly, through the wholesale selling program, we're certainly doing some good stuff with a lot of the independent retailers and the smaller grocery sellers. And doing some of the things that Zespri does, in-store tastings. We've got 5 people that go in around Australia, just 5, 1 in each state, who basically, they just go into the stores, make sure our fruit's being displayed okay, talk to the manager, put a bit of point of sale material out. We run a few competitions, costs us $20,000. So not a whole lot of money. I'd like to be able to spend more, but as I said, we're a relatively small business. What they do like, what all of those people like, all of the supermarkets, is the fact that the company is owned by the growers and the packers of the fruit. No middleman. So it can be done, and you can start at a small level, and perhaps in 5 years' time, I hope I can come back and tell you that we're at the Zespri type proportion in terms of our brand recognition. There's a long way to go, but I believe we will get there. Now, can it be applied in Australia? And I'm not going to be arrogant enough to say absolutely, but I will, because I think it can. You do need scale. I keep saying about scale. You do need scale because you do have to spend money. And you've got to deliver against the brand. It's no point saying you've got a great quality product when you don't deliver that. You'll be in the market 1 minute and gone the next. We all know that. So what can it mean? It has to be cooperation, like NutriKiwi. You know, the growers and the packers have got together. So you compete domestically, but you cooperate internationally. And it's got to be an absolute commitment to a long-term plan. You know, it's no good judging it on the first or second or third year, but you certainly should be judging it by year 5, I would argue. And just picking up on some comments I heard over the last couple of days, I've had a number of people said, well, you know, I think it's the role of HIA or APAL to get this happening. Well, my reaction to that is, that's fine, those guys can help, but at the end of the day, the people who write the cheques, which you're the growers and the packers, you're the guys that need to make this happen. Because you're the ones, I said, who write the cheques. But most importantly, these other guys can't do it because they don't have the commercial relationship with the buyers. Only you guys have that. Someone outside the chain cannot generate this sort of thing. It doesn't work that way. You're going to be wasting your money, in my view. It's got to be done by the people growing the product and packing the product. You're the ones who have the commercial relationship with the buyer, can actually deliver this sort of an outcome. Anyway, thank you.